Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session titled Corporate and Farmer Engagement Shrimp Welfare Perspective with Lien-Huong and Sri Rang. I'm Wayne and I'll be the MC for the session. Following a 20-minute talk by Lien-Huong and Sri Rang, we'll move on to a live Q&A session where they will respond to your questions. You can submit your question through swap card, and then after 30 minutes of question, we'll bring the Q&A to an end. If you have any other questions for Lien-Huong, Sri Rang, or the Shrimp Web Pair Project team, you can join their office hour happening straight after the session on Zoom. For now, I would like to introduce our speakers for the session. Lien-Huong is the Corporate Engagement and Southeast Asia Coordinator for Shrimp Welfare Project. She has 10 years of experience working with international nonprofit and research institute in Vietnam, Hungary, and Singapore. She got a master's degree in human rights from Central European University and a bachelor degree in sociology from Nanyang Technological University. Sri Rang is the India coordinator for the Shrimp Welfare Project, where he has been working for about 2 years. With years of experience in animal rights and welfare, he also has a background in advertising, having served as a creative strategist for various trade shows and Indian corporations. Sri Rang is dedicated to minimizing animal suffering as much as possible. So now, without further ado, please welcome Lien-Huong and Sri Rang.
Hello, everyone. I hope you all can hear. You can all hear us well. There are two of us today, so will be double the fun. So we're from Shrimp Welfare Project, and today we're gonna share a bit of our insights from our practical work on corporate and farmer engagement. A bit of time, I'll just start. All right, so today we'll start with some introduction about our organization and the key activities and interventions that we are doing, and then we'll move on to the opportunities and approaches, basically explaining why we are doing what we are doing and why we think it's important to do for these interventions to happen. And the last part of the presentation, we will talk about the practical insights and the way forward, basically reflecting on the work that we are doing and what next in the near future. And let's get started with the introduction. So, as you can see, our organization is called Shrimp Welfare Project. And I just wanted to take some time to briefly explain why we picked this cause as the one and only focus of our organization's activities. And the main reason, biggest reason, is because shrimps is the most numerously farmed animal on the planet for human consumption. So as you can see on the slide, 140 billion of shrimps farmed each year for human consumption versus the number of fish and chickens, as you can see in the diagram. And we choose this cause areas. This is like a classic effective altruism, like ground of reasoning. So it's because of the scale, as I have highlighted, the number of animals being impacted, and the issues surrounding shrimp welfare has been neglected until very recently. It didn't receive adequate attention until very recently. And this cause is tractable. So as proven later through the work, I'll explain a bit further the work done by animal advocacy groups. Resources, when invested into a certain extent, can be a game changer for the lives of billions of animals. And just a quick introduction about us, so that we know where we come from. So we are Shrimp Welfare Project, and we are UK-based non-profit, but we are operating not only in the UK, but also in South and Southeast Asia, Latin America, and continental Europe. These include the countries where we have partnerships and core staff. And we are the first non-profit focusing exclusively on shrimp welfare, especially farm shrimps. And the four main areas of activities that we are doing are farmer engagement, corporate engagement, And on top of that, we also do some research and outreach. Then I think it's time to move to the second part of this presentation. So with Sri Rang, we are going to share, like some explanations on why we are choosing certain interventions, and in particular, what are the opportunities that we identified, and why we think this would make the difference to the lives of the animals. So I will start. Basically, today you will hear the two of us talking. We'll take turns to talk to you. Because corporate engagement and farm engagement are the two main activities that we are working on and investing most of our efforts and resources into. So so I will be talking to you about corporate engagement, and I think Win has given you a brief introduction of myself, but to recap, I am the corporate engagement and Southeast Asia coordinator. So what you're going to hear from me today is mostly on my experience of working in corporate engagement. And Sri Rang is our India program coordinator, and he will share with you lots of interesting insights from his experience of doing farm engagement. So let's get started with the corporate engagement opportunities and approaches that we have identified. So the issue is that for my sharing today for this section, I would like to focus on our Women Slots initiative, which is basically the soul of the corporate engagement program at the moment for Shrimp Welfare Project. And problem that we have identified when it comes to how shrimps are being slaughtered, how they typically die in the farms, in processing plants, is so there are basically four main ways that they are being slaughtered. Either they are left to be suffocated. Once they're taken out of the water, they can be left, in a basket, in the air, out of water, lacking oxygen and water to breathe. And either that or they are transported live, maybe in a barrel of water, very high density and low level of oxygen for hours, either to wet markets or to processing plants, because a lot of consumers still think that the meat quality is better if they are still alive until this point. And the third way that they typically are slaughtered is the ice slurry. So once they're taken out of the pond, harvested is the term that the industry is usually using. They put into ice slurry, and many people just tend to think that this is how they would die without feeling anything. But it has been proven to be a very poor welfare practice to let the shrimps die a very prolonged and painful death in the ice. And the fourth way that they typically die is they're crushed by the weight of other animals while being transported, while waiting to be weighed. So these are all, like the main ways that shrimps are killed, and these are not, like good at all for their welfare. And these are the pictures that we took from the field. So the first picture on the left were taken from India. As you can see, they're taken out of water and they're put on these big baskets. And even some farm workers are, like stepping on them. Second picture was taken from a wet market in Vietnam. Some pieces of ice are put on top of the shrimps, not necessarily to stun them, or it's mostly the main purpose actually to keep them fresh. And then third picture was taken from the so-called harvest lorry in Vietnam. So in that barrel is how the shrimps are kept and transported to the processing plant or to wet markets. So we identify these as the opportunities to tackle this problem. So shrimps, the idea of having a shrimp stunning equipment is relatively new, but the technology to stun animals, and in particular aquatic animals, has existed for quite some time for other species like salmon or trout. And second opportunity that we identify is retailers in the UK were relatively open to the idea of stunning the shrimps as a more humane way to slaughter the shrimps. However, on the other hand, the suppliers, the producers who are supplying to these retailers are still hesitant to adopt this relatively new technology, and their main concerns are in terms of logistics. So road access, like sometimes the road leading to the farms bumpy or too narrow. They're also concerned about electricity in some countries. Like access to proper adequate power source at farms are limited, and also safety. They have concerns about safety for the workers who work at the farm, because this is like an equipment that use electricity to stun these animals, and they are wondering if it poses any danger to the people who operate the machine. They also have questions about meat quality, whether it will burn the meat of the shrimps or affect freshness. And most importantly, producers are concerned about the level of investment that I have to put in, because these equipments are not very cheap. I mean, like they're not super expensive, but it's still some level of investment is required. And when they're still uncertain about whether they can have any benefit from adopting it. And we feel that the key to unlock this impasse is, first of all, through subsidy, to address users' concerns about, like resources to invest in this machine. And also it needs a lot of facilitation and industry outreach effort to, talking to people, connecting the bridges, explaining and addressing the concerns of different parties involved in the supply chain. So, so in the Humane Slaughter Initiative, based on our analysis of these opportunities, and the key to solve the problem, the approach that we are taking at the moment is very, very simple. We are providing the first electrical stunners for certain producers who commit to stun a minimum of 100 million shrimps per year. And if you convert it to weight, it's about 1,800 metric tons per year. However, we look at each producer individually to assess whether they are eligible for this program. So just a minute of celebration. So some of the key achievements that we have managed to gain for this program, in expectation each year, with the level of intervention and outreach that we are getting with the 13 producers in Vietnam, Thailand, Honduras, Ecuador, and Venezuela, and Sri Lanka. Expectedly, we can help to 2,600,000,000 shrimps per year. And if you want to convert it to some sort of cost effectiveness, it's 1,600 shrimps helped per dollar per year. And besides this quantitative, like achievement, some other impacts that we kind of indirectly achieved, not on our own, but like with the coordination and support and collaborations with different parties. Retailers' commitment. So some big retailers in the UK, in particular Tesco, Marks and Spencer, and Sainsbury, and a retailer in the Netherlands, which is Albert Heijn, have published a public commitment where they are committed to adopt certain welfare practices for the shrimps that are being sold in their supply chain. And with our contribution to, by granting the stunning equipment to their suppliers in Asia and Latin America, it kind of contributed to the momentum that they are pushing on to achieve this level of commitment. And in terms of the involvement of seafood companies like Sofina Young's Library, Classical in the Netherlands, etc., and Westbridge in the UK as well, these seafood companies who supply to these retailers have many of them have come to us and either I mean we approached them at the beginning, but at a later stage when the program has become more known in the industry, we have started to receive like correspondence and initiation of contact from these seafood companies. So this is a big change that we think is worth celebrating. Academic research, we're collaborating with the University of Stirling in Scotland to do some practical research on validating these behavioral indicators and to come up with like some a set of criteria to make sure that the shrimp are successfully stunned and which can be adopted on a commercial scale. So and also certifiers like ASC have has listed sunning as an acceptable um, way to slaughter shrimps in their standard. And at Seafood Expo Global this year, the industry has shifted in how they think about shrimp welfare has become more mainstreamed on the table. And policymakers like the Dutch Parliament in June this year has voted in favor of a proposal by the Party for the Animals to outlaw isolation and to ban imports into the European of shrimp produced using this method. So these are like some of the other impacts that I wanted to highlight from the perspective of corporate engagement. We didn't, like we again, I don't want to say that we are the only people who make these changes happen, but I think with many other animal advocacy groups and us and efforts of pioneering industry stakeholders. This is what looks like right now, much more positive than years ago. I think I will stop here with this section and I'll pass on to my colleague Sri Rang to share with you about farm engagement, the insights from Insight.
Well, thanks, Lien-Huong. Hey, everyone. Before we dive into the opportunities and approaches for the farmer engagement, I wanted to show you a picture of a typical farm. So this is how a typical shrimp farm looks like. Basically, you have a pond with some aerators, and there are some bird lines to prevent predation, basically. And it also has inlet and outlet channels, which you can't see right now because it's filled with water. And most of such farms are located in quite remote places with really poor road connectivity. And sometimes walking on your foot is your only choice to reach these farms. Next. So the pond that we saw, the farm that we saw is a semi-intensive one, which accounts for majority of the production worldwide. But with that, we also have intensive and super intensive production systems. So stocking density in the semi-intensive system is capped, at least in India, at 60 shrimps per square meter. But that can go up to 150 in the intensive and up to 500 for the super intensive forms of production. And please note that in the intensive forms of production, you basically have a pond that's lined with a polythene sheet. And as you move on to the super intensive systems, you basically don't have a pond anymore. It's just a giant container or a tank that has really sophisticated aeration system with a lot of state-of-the-art equipment in place. So here the stocking density, as I said earlier, can go up to 500. So to sustain that, you really need a sophisticated system in place. Next. Well, a bit about productions. Next, please. So India has seen almost 7x growth in shrimp production from 2010. In 2010, it was at 142,000 metric tons, but the forecast for 2024 is close to 1 million metric tons. So this massive growth has happened despite the frequent disease outbreaks that the industry is plagued with. Next, please. Same is the case for the global scenario. The global production is close to getting doubled from 3.5 metric tons in 2010. The forecast for 2024 is close to 6 million metric tons. Next, please. So coming back to the farmer engagement, as our primary approach, the first and foremost question could be like why farmer engagement? Like there are so many different players in the industry, from the hatcheries to nurseries, where the productions seem to be quite streamlined, and we might have a better impact there. So why farmer engagement? So the answer to that is two-pronged. The first one is barring the first few days of shrimps at nursery or hatchery, uh, most of the time is spent at the farms. So that gives us a very good scope of about 3 months to improve their living conditions. And despite having several players in the market who can influence farmers' decisions, the farmers are like the primary custodians, if I can say, to the shrimps and how their culture progresses. And the second part to the question is the openness to receive suggestions. We have scoped a few countries in the beginning, but the Indian farmers, especially small and medium scale farmers, seem to be quite open to receiving suggestions and letting us visit their farms. So the combination of these two factors led us to choose farmer engagement as our primary approach in India. Well, whilst we talk about the farmer engagement, um, uh, we cannot miss out on the demography. So the demography is quite diverse. So we have farmers who have like just half an acre of land in which they culture shrimp and fish together and barely make a living out of that. And we have the farmers who have like hundreds and thousands of acres, who have all the resources in the world, who have like a dedicated team of technicians. They have in-house labs as well. So they have so basically they don't need us. So that's why we chose to work with small and medium scale farmers to begin with. And with that, we also need to factor in the psyche or outlook of the farmers. What we must take into account whilst engaging with them is most of these farmers would do fish farming before, and they have moved on to shrimp farming in the chase of better or higher returns. So they have this. So they're willing to take the higher risk in terms of in whilst chasing higher returns. So this is something that we must consider. Next slide. Lien-Huong, could you please move on? Yeah, right. Cool. So SSFI, that is Sustainable Shrimp Farmers of India, is a platform that we have built, and all this the combination of these factors has led us to build this platform, uh, which is like a place to disseminate information and interact with farmers. And we also have a hotline for the farmers so that they can contact us in case of any difficulty they face with their culture. Under this program, right now, we have undertaken sludge removal as our main activity, and we plan to impact about 20 to 30 million shrimps this year through the sludge removal from 100 acres. And majority of that work has been already carried out. We'll speak more about that work in the coming slides. Well, the practical insights and the way forward. I think we are beginning this section with our corporate work. So, Lien-Huong, could you please take over?
So we're coming to the third part of this presentation, and I'm going to talk first about the practical insights and the way forward for corporate engagement. Uh, so here I just wanted to share what seems to have worked relatively well for us. And this is like from the perspective of talking about like in the future, if you want to like carry out some sort of advocacy work on farm animals, something that we found from our experience of working with industry players. So we feel that before we decide to do any activity or intervention, it is very important to study the supply chain, especially through mapping the different stakeholders in the supply chain, and to understand its mechanism and structure. And then we found it is most impactful when we tackle the welfare issues based on our in-depth understanding of the supply chain's structure, and and this can be done, either by a very by scoping work, like by going to the field, or by doing very deep review of the current research about the issue, and also in industry's literature. And what worked for us was also the influence of buyers who care about animal welfare and have real bargaining power. By buyers here, I meant not the consumers, but seafood companies who buy from the producers in key farming countries. And these are the people who have, they stand in between retailers and suppliers. And if they are convinced about animal welfare, they would be in the position to talk to both parties and to make changes happen. And we also found it very useful to leverage on the ecosystem of organizations in the movement. So as I've mentioned before, the changes that have been achieved, like the improvements to shrimp welfare, changes in policy, in retailer commitment, have been achieved by the coordination and collaborations of different organizations. Those who are doing public awareness work, like Crustacean Compassion in the UK, or Compassion in Bull Farming, or Wakatir in the Netherlands, etc. These are just a few names. And then when it comes to organizations like us who provide practical financial support for the transition of the industry. So these are a few key factors that we have found have positively impacted the results of our work until now. And what has not worked I would like to highlight that it's in most cases, because it's not always the case. We found that approaching producers, the people who are, in the first stage of the supply chain, if we decide to approach them directly in the early stage of the movement, let's say shrimp welfare advocacy movement, when understanding of the industry, of consumers, of buyers are not still very limited. People haven't had the awareness, and when we try to approach them directly without any influence or connections with their buyers, with their seafood companies and retailers, it typically didn't work for us. And with the exception of one producer in Latin America, who was basically a pioneer in the industry in that country, and they proactively came to us, and it's just through connection in an industry event. That was the only exception. And then the other 12 producers who we are collaborating with in the Humane Slaughter Initiative, all through some sort of connection with retailers or their buyers. So so I think this is an important lesson learned for us. And also it hasn't worked very well with producers who haven't had a commitment from buyers. At the moment, after after some publicity and the program has received more attention, producers have started to come to us and talking about enrolling themselves into this program. But when there hasn't been a commitment from their buyers, there comes the question of who are going to buy those shrimps. What if their customers don't like to buy shrimps that are stunned? What if they only like to buy the shrimps that are still alive because of freshness? These kind of questions, when there's no commitment from the buyers and there's no real demand from them, it's still very uncertain for producers to be involved in this program. It's not that it's not impossible for them to join, but can be an obstacle to make sure that it will work in the future sustainably. And in the third case, we found that it hasn't worked very well with producers who heard about the program, who were keen, who were interested, but they still thought about it as an experiment. They just wanted to give it an easy try and just wanted to use the stunning equipment for a few months and see how it goes. In this kind of situation, we would typically say no to them because um, once we decide to enroll a producer in the program, it has to be um, the assessment of their eligibility, commitment, and understanding about the program, how it works, and what are the challenges that they might have to face and they have to address. It has to be very clear before they can join the program. And some other lessons learned. It's important to be innovative and grounded in identifying the opportunities for intervention, meaning all should understand the context that we are operating in for the cause that we are working towards, understanding the socio-economic and social and cultural environment of the countries or of the market or of the province of the region that we're working on, know your grounds. And it's also important to know the threat and challenges and be prepared for it because what you face in the field when you talk to different stakeholders in the supply chain and in the market can be quite pose a big surprise, and you need some sort of adaptability to handle those. And it's okay to let go and look for new solutions when the initial plans don't seem to work. And yeah, that's what and this is like again my point about being innovative is like don't get like stuck in just one idea at the beginning. Be willing to just let go and see identify the opportunities. It can come in a very unexpected way. And moving forward for corporate engagement, we plan to continue to expand our impact in key shrimp farming regions and retail industry in new markets. Currently, we are working with a lot of retailers and seafood companies in the UK market, but we hope to expand that to continental Europe and other continents. And also, we plan to consolidate and expand our support and advocate for publication of more commitments. And these are like some of the plans that we plan to implement in the future. More would come, but when the plans are more certain, I think we would be in a better position to share with you all. Now I'll pass on to Sri Rang to share about farm engagement.
Thanks, Lien-Huong. So I'll begin this session with what worked with respect to the farmer engagement. Next slide, please. So what worked in our case, the first and foremost is identifying bad zones. So when you compare shrimps with vastly cultured fish species in India, shrimps are quite delicate species. They require better water quality, more stringent monitoring, and they are susceptible to like host of diseases. And we found some zones in Andhra Pradesh where farmers uh, were crippled with rudimentary ways of farming and also with diseases. And these markets were like cut off from the connectivity and the main market basically. So we identified these zones and found that our contributions could be quite valuable there instead of like working with medium or large scale producers basically. What worked in our favor, secondly, is interventions that were a part of farmers' routine. Here you can blame our neophyte ambitions in the very beginning. Is along the way what we noticed is that if we ask farmers to do like reasonably, no, not unreasonably large things, is we thought of increasing the testing frequency in the beginning or providing them with weighing scale so that they weigh the feed before they feed the shrimps, or like maintaining a proper feeding chart. All these things seemed quite reasonable in the very beginning, but like uh, they were not fitting into the farmers' routing and would cost them a lot of time, and basically they would never do that. So we met with a lot of reluctance there. So we realized that interventions that take minimal time and efforts from the farmers seemed more doable. Lastly, containing proliferativeness. This is a catch-22 situation. Anyone who has worked in the welfare space knows that by improving the living condition of the animals, you improve the productivity, and thereby you also tend to increase the proliferativeness of the system. We have found a unique way to kind of contain that or keep it at minimal. And to very honestly, struggle quite a bit to find this intervention. Uh, yeah. Lena, would you please? Yeah. So, like going back to a typical farm, like outwardly, this might seem like a very simple business. Like you have a pond, basically, you put in baby shrimps and you add feed and you wait till they grow and you like harvest. But that's not the case. With that, you have like a ballooning market of all sorts of additives, which are sometimes rightly added, and many times they are quite indiscriminately added because once a few diseases strike, farmers get into the panic mode and they just follow a lot of advices from the technicians and fellow farmers, and they add many additives uh, to contain the undesirable outcomes. And a large chunk of these additives are added to contain the effects of leftover excreta and uneaten feed that's rotting at the in the pond bottom. Basically, that becomes like a huge lump of organic matter, which leads to host of problems, including hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, and plankton blooms. We identified that these three are the most noticeable problems for the farmers. Can you move on? Yeah. So at the end of a few culture, this is how a pond looks. It's filled with organic matter, mainly comprising of uneaten feed, excreta, and a host of other organic matter. So this big lump is rotting at the bottom. So our intervention aims at removing it. Yeah, Lien-Huong, please. Yeah. So with the additives that I spoke of, those comprise mainly of prebiotics, probiotics, minerals, enzymes, vitamins, and disinfectants, binding agents, and immune stimulants. And here we are not even accounting for a very large unregulated market of herbal additives, which farmers use indiscriminately to contain the effects, the undesirable effects of the rotting organic matter at the bottom. Uh, can you please go on to the next slide? Yeah. So this is a small video. Can you please play the video, Lino?
I'm not sure it's
No,
playing.
no, no worries. You can just jump on to the next slide. Yeah. I think. Uh, yeah, I think it's playing, but it's quite choppy. But what I wanted to basically show you here is one of our sludge pumps pumping out the sludge in the wet form. Yeah, Leno, you can just move on to the next slide. Yeah. So, yeah. So, do we remove sludge from each and every pond that we are approached by? No, we have a basic selection criteria. Though this seems quite basic, but this has worked quite well so far. So our selection criteria is the hydrogen sulfide in the pond has to be more than 0.05 ppm, and a lot of experts believe that even the level up to 0.01 or 0.02 could be quite toxic to the shrimps. And second criteria is farmers must reduce the stocking density by 20% for the 3 consecutive crops. This way, we ensure that we are not proliferating the system, and farmers do not increase the stocking density just because we have improved the condition of the farm. And lastly, there should be a place to release sludge to make sure that we are not polluting the waterways or the ground. Yeah. Can you please move on? Yeah. About the benefits, the first and foremost, the benefit of sludge removal is it evidently reduces hydrogen sulfide levels. In several cases, we have seen that it goes down to flat zero from 0.06, 7, or 8, and sometimes it remains at 0.1 or 0.2, but there is an evident decrease in the case of hydrogen sulfide, and we see this effect lasting in the consecutive cultures as well. So even if it is like a second or third culture, we see low hydrogen sulfide cases. We also believe that this intervention improves ammonia and other parameters too, but we need a larger set of data to confirm this. As I said earlier, this effect lasts beyond the ongoing culture. And lastly, it increases the space. So the space, the increasing space is not just vertical, it's horizontal as well. Though we don't consider like increased space as a major impact, but when you couple that with reduced stocking density, you have like increased space with reduced stocking density. That's something to account for. Well, moving on to the impact. So far, we have covered 85 acres through sludge removal in 2024, and this will impact 20 to 30 million shrimps. And through this, we have also found a network of farmers in 6 villages. Apart from the sludge removal, they also receive consultation from us from time to time basis. Next slide, please. Well, what did not work in our case? As I said earlier, educating farmers to bring major changes in their farming practices has did not work. Lowering the stocking density without immediate benefits did not work as well, because there are a few opinion leaders in the industry who say like lowering stocking density is better. But while speaking to the farmers, we didn't have any material to prove that, and we just relied on these testimonials. To mitigate that, we have conducted a research with Tamil Nadu University, and the results will be out quite soon. But so far, lowering stocking density without immediate benefits did not work. And lastly, chill killing is an activity that we tried very recently, and it was quite easy to do on our part because we just needed to provide them with some resources. But we also noticed along the way that this requires a wide scale acceptance in the industry, and only when a few buyers would place the requirement for the chill killing, this would happen, and in the rest of the cases, this wouldn't happen. Yeah. Next slide, please. Lessons learned. Basically, these are our markups. Try to expand only when you have a solid base or hypothesis. Well, this is relating to our expansion into different states, and thankfully, we learned it quite early on in early 3 to 4 months that we needed to have like a solid base or hypothesis to expand in other states apart from Andhra Pradesh. Secondly, farmers were way more educated and well versed with the science of farming. This is more of a personal learning than the organizational one. Having worked with poultry and dairy farmers before, I presume that the shrimp farmers are going to be quite similar, but they were way more well versed with the science of farming, and that's also because of the nature of the farming itself. You have to be quite vigilant and monitor the progress of the culture quite closely and observant towards many aspects of the farming. Next slide, please. Yeah. So way forward, well, next year we plan to remove sludge from 3 to 500 acres, and we want to remove the sludge on a non-profit, no profit, no loss basis. What I mean by that is, as we don't have any, we are not like bound to make any profits through this activity. We want the farmers to chip in a higher percentage of the cost, so that it ultimately becomes like we break even the cost and becomes a no profit no loss activity, so that we can cover wider area. Larger needs assessment plus scoping. As I said earlier, we found some of these bad zones in Andhra Pradesh. There, and we suspect that there could be many similar issues specific to certain region or certain types of farming, and we want to definitely explore that. The third one, tunners in India. We plan to have the first tunner in India. So far, we are faced with some India-specific challenges, if I can say, in this space. Mainly, that stems out of small farms, which are like mostly 1 to 2 acres, and which are like quite spread across, which presents as challenge with moving the equipment. So we want to like address that but by engaging only a few producers who can do it. And lastly, of course, all the pitfalls that I mentioned, we want to be aware of those whilst we expand. Next slide, please. Well, if you have made us this far and still with us, we and if you want to kind of join us, you can, or if you want to donate, you can follow these links. And lastly, next slide, please. We are immensely grateful to OpenPhil, EA Funds, ACE, and and Animal Charity AIM. So that for their support, and we are also grateful to a lot of individual donors who found our work valuable. Thanks.
Wow, thank you so much for the extensive sharing. It must have required so much trust building and field research to gain in-depth knowledge on the context of the shrimp supply chain. And the presentation clearly showed that shrimp welfare also required a lot of strategy, right, to find out what works and what didn't. And you've also learned a lot during the way as one of the first nonprofits that worked on this field. Amazing work. Thank you so much. I think we have only time for one small question now, and we will move on to your office hour for the next question. Can you tell us a little bit more about the stunning process and exactly how it entails less suffering?
So I think for the stunning process currently, we are working with two systems. So we call them the dry system and the wet system. So in the dry system, basically, once the shrimps are taken from the pond, out of the pond, either by people dragging nets or by a harvester, which is like a pump to pump them in water out of the pond. In between that and ice slurry, they would go through the stunner. And for the case of the dry stunner, it's a piece of equipment. Basically, the shrinks would enter a conveyor belt, and some, we call them the fingers, some metal fingers. Basically, the shrinks just within 1 to 2 seconds, they are stunned. They are rendered unconscious. Using the electrodes, like generated through these metal fingers and the conveyor belt, and then the conveyor belt will bring them out onto the ice slurry. So that is the dry stunner. And then for the wet stunner, instead of like the shrimps being taken out of the water, they are pumped onto a tube, and inside the tube there's water, and so they are stunned in the water environment. So it's less stressful for them. And the wet system is a bit of still in the trial pilot phase. It is a bit less established than the dry system, but it has a lot of positive outcomes as we notice from the pilot recently. And but on the other hand, it's a little bit more costly than the dry system. But basically, these are like the two systems that we're working with and what we are granting and providing to the suppliers in this program.
Thank you so much. And that concludes the Q&A of the session. So a reminder, if you have any other questions for Lien-Huong, Sri Rang, or the Shrimp Welfare Project team, please join their office hours happening straight after the session on Zoom. Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much.